What's up YouTube, JR Flagman here, and before we get this video started, I want to mention I'm doing this voiceover completely after the fact. All the original audio was scrapped in an attempt to get some better quality out of my audio. So when you see me gesturing and pointing at things, I'm going to try to stay on topic, but I will add some more details that I didn't originally cover while I was shooting this video. We're doing a water temperature gauge install today. It's pretty much a universal thing, so you'll see me do this on the Mini Cooper. This works for any car with a radiator hose. We're going to be installing in line with the radiator hose instead of in the block, which is where you would conventionally want to get your temperature from because it's a little bit more accurate. But this way, as long as the car's up to temperature and the thermostat has opened properly, you'll see the correct temperature for the most part. It'll be within a few degrees. Now this kit is basically just a little metal tube. It's going to go in line with the radiator hose. You can see me pointing there to my sort of factory bleed adapter. This is a plastic housing on this car, and I wanted to use this area right from the beginning, and I found this nice adapter kit. It worked out excellent. If you don't have something like this, that's okay. All you need to do is take your radiator hose wherever you want to install this and cut about an inch, inch and a half, whatever the width of that sort of thicker part is, out of the radiator hose, and we're going to slip this in. The kit comes with the correct tube and some adapters and radiator hoses. The Teflon tape was not provided, of course. You'll want to use Teflon tape on any sort of threaded fitting, especially with fluids, because it will prevent leakage. When you are using the Teflon tape, make sure that you're not getting it so far into the water passageway that you're going to end up with bits of Teflon tape floating in your cooling system and clogging things up. I went a little overboard on this first fitting, and you'll see later on that I cleaned it up a bit. And as I said here, we're just going to be simply installing this in line with the radiator hose. So I've got this plastic adapter. We're going to take these hose clamps off, slip it out, and make sure that we catch any spillage and slip the new thing in. Pretty easy. I've had to lift my car up to get the drip pan underneath there, so make sure that you're using jack stands if you're going to set up your car, especially if you're getting underneath it. And when you're dropping fluids, make sure you're catching them and disposing of them, especially coolant or antifreeze. Animals love the stuff. It's usually illegal to dump it, and make sure you're getting this stuff disposed of properly or stored away safely. So that's the reason for this little clip here, just showing you the safety aspects. And next thing we're going to be doing is simply taking off the hose clamps, pulling it apart. There's really not a whole lot to explain here, I think, but I just wanted to show you guys how I did this and how I got myself a nice mechanical gauge into my Mini Cooper. If you're going to be using an electrical gauge for this, that works just fine. The only thing is you'll have to run a ground wire, which is something I don't really show you in this. So here comes the first radiator hose. A little bit of coolant spillage, but I can face that upward and minimize it. And boom, look at that. I mean, that's really all there is to it. As you can see, that hose is stretched a bit. I had a hell of a time getting that thing stretched. I think it took me almost an hour and a lot of soapy water and personal lubricant. It can be your friend. I know it sounds weird, but definitely having a bottle of that around the shop can help you out. We've got this in. That fitting is threaded in. Now all we need to do is run the sending unit through the firewall and bring it over. With a mechanical gauge, the sending unit is permanently affixed to the back of the gauge, meaning we need to fish this in from inside the cab. Now that can be kind of hard, so if you're using an electrical gauge, you've got the advantage. You can run the wire after the fact. I'm using basically some spare electrical wire, wrap it around here to create a sort of fishing line. And I'm just going to tie that around there. I'm going to shove that up as close as I can to the firewall, to the hole I'm using, and we're going to pull it through. If you have the grommets for it and you want to drill a new hole in your firewall, feel free. But if you're going to put a new hole, make sure you're putting a rubber grommet. I don't have any rubber grommets, and I know I have enough room here, and I didn't want to drill a new hole into the Mini's firewall, so I used the existing one. Now after I drove this around a bit, got it up to temperature, I noticed that my two gauges were reading differently, and that my gauge was reading a little bit cooler and sometimes bouncing around when the factory gauge was pretty much consistent. I figure I must have an air bubble, and since we just installed this at basically the top of the cooling system, I can use this as a bleed valve. The engine's hot, coolant's hot, it's under pressure, so it's going to come squirting out of here. All we need to do is crack this open until all the air escapes and we're blowing out coolant, and then we're going to tighten it back down. It's probably not perfect, but it's how I did it. Again, make sure you use a drip pan. Inside the car here, we're back to 185 degrees now, and the factory gauge built into the dash is showing just under halfway. My understanding on this car is that the halfway mark is 190, and since we're reading just under 190 on our gauge, we can assume it's probably pretty accurate, and it should be. The car's up to temperature, thermostat's open, coolant should be relatively even temperature all the way around. So this is exactly what we expect. Also, because we have two different gauges on opposite sides of the thermostat, we can gauge the function of our thermostat and make sure it opens correctly. That's about all though, guys. I hope this video was helpful and I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions about how to do this specifically with your vehicle, feel free to leave that below in the comments. I'd love to try and help you out, learn what project you're working on. And if you saw me do anything wrong, you want to help others, you want to help me, let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if this was helpful because that really helps me out. And I have a surprise for the next video, guys, so stay tuned. It's going to be pretty exciting.